Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, Ladan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast. Today's guest is Jojo Platt, and she actually just helped put on a conference, which was the MSRI-EC conference. Basically, it was a translational neuromodulation. So what the point of this was to bring leaders in human neuromodulation devices to talk about progress and the gaps in the translation of these devices from universities and into startups. It was put on by the National Science Foundation, NSF, to basically justify having some kind of institute or having some kind of center where these kind of translations could take place. So it was very interesting. Afterwards, we talked about the NeuraLink announcement, which luckily enough actually happened about a half hour after the second day of the conference finished up. And then Jo has an announcement at the end too. She has her own project that she's working on. Anyways, this is a really fast emergency episode because we have a lot of guests lined up. And so we put this one to the front of the line. Enjoy. Jojo Platt, pleasure to have you on the show. It's not your first time making your presence on these airwaves, through these ones and zeros in your phone or wherever you're listening to this podcast. I am having you on a bonus emergency episode because you just helped organize a really great conference, which was done a few days ago. At time of recording, this was 4 or 5 days ago. And man, the acronym for this conference is just completely, it's MSRI-EC conference, but it was really good. It was manufacturing, translational neuroscience, like making sure that turns into a viable product. Do you want to talk about this a little bit and talk about the conference a bit?
Sure. So I was approached by Professor Shadi Daya of UCSD, and we've been connected on LinkedIn, Twitter for quite some time, and I had been aware of his work, but we had never really engaged at any sort of personal level. So he wrote and won a proposal with the National Science Foundation to put on this conference. And the goal of the conference really is then to produce a report and hopefully convince the National Science Foundation to make a significant investment in a GMP facility that is geared toward and accessible by academics and academic labs and early stage startups so that the path to translation is shortcutted a little bit. We worked together on the program. He had his vision in place and we started talking and I just started chiming in. If you're going to have this topic, you got to have so-and-so. And within 20 minutes, we had the program populated and almost without exception, everybody accepted right off the bat. So it was really great. Came together very quickly.
Yeah, great. How long ago was this? When did he approach you?
I want to say mid to late June. So I think being an online conference, we had that advantage. We had targeted maybe a week earlier than this past week, but decided we each had some personal conflicts and thought we'd still have enough time if we did it last week. People were kind enough, especially folks in Europe that were on their summer vacation, were kind enough to join us from their vacation spots and put some time in. So that was really an honor to see that too.
That's great. So what were some of the highlights of the conference? Maybe some big names, some great topics that were discussed?
Honestly, for me, one of the greatest compliments that I heard, actually, there were two. One was before the program started, and Stephanie Lacour from EPFL, when I reached out to her to invite her, she said, actually, I loathe online conferences and I swore I would never do one, but this topic is so important that I'm going to break my rule and participate. And I'm really happy she did. She's an amazing scientist and her perspective and her passion about her subject is really infectious. And I think the other one that made me jump up and down in my office with my video off was when Cameron McIntyre, today is at Case, he'll be at Duke very soon, but he opened his presentation by saying that this was one of the harder presentations he's ever given because he's never covered this topic in this way. So it was gratifying to know that we brought a unique topic and a unique perspective, and people really put a lot of time and effort into helping Shadi and to advance his vision and presentation to NSF.
A lot of times at conferences, people or the professors, they just have their canned speech. Okay, this is what we've been doing. This conference was definitely like a little bit more tailored towards this topic. So do you want to talk about the topic a little bit? We need to build an institute, and why would we need to do that? What's the justification? And do you think that we proved it to NSF?
I'm going to leave it to Shadi to prove it. I think he's got a lot of great material to work with, and thankfully the job from here on out is not mine. But I think that most often we made a really compelling case to provide manufacturing facilities and capabilities to the academic community. For instance, we opened the conference with video testimonials from Ian Burkhart and Kelly Owens, both of whom are research advocates and participants themselves. So Ian obviously has a brain implant, Kelly has a vagus nerve stimulator, and they helped drive home the message that we need to do everything we can to accelerate translation. So each of them individually benefit from being early research participants, and they, along with we, want to really do everything we can to push these out to patients all around the world, not just on a trial basis. So I think having people like Paul Lane and Eddie Chang and some of it's hard to cherry pick the names because they were all really impressive, but to have everyone stand behind this need so that we can iterate quickly and we can prove or disprove some of the hardware problems that are out there in a quality environment really makes a big difference. And I think some of the startups that are now getting more traction could have benefited from these facilities back when they were still academic undertakings.
Yeah, definitely. And bring it all under one roof. That way there's a lot less, inefficiencies or something like this when it has to be passed between one group and one location to another. You can like literally walk down the street and, have a collaborator. I think that's definitely the right way to do it. Another thing that was interesting is connectors. That's something I'm working on here at University of Florida. And we need less of this super sexy, okay, this is a completely new device. We need the basic stuff. Like, how do we plug into it? And how do we make sure that's repeatable? So I thought that was funny too.
I did. And I was thinking, I think it's great. You're starting with Jack Judy here at the University of Florida. And when the connector discussion started happening, I remember with exquisite detail, Jack was wearing a red shirt and his signature khaki pants. And here's this giant man waving his arms in front of an audience at an IE conference years and years ago, talking about the necessity for uniform connectors, that everybody's working with the same thing. Everything on side A and side B of the connector can be whatever you want it to be, but we need to have some standardization happening there. And so it's great to know that you're working on that project that's moving along. I'm excited.
Yeah. So kind of a lot of weight on my shoulders, or for all our shoulders. Yeah. Another really interesting thing about the conference was actually this was the first time I had seen Vanessa Tolosa speak, and she was one of the founding members of Elon Musk's NeuraLink. And then I was writing with her later on after the conference, and she was saying that was the first time that she had spoken publicly in 3 years. It was really cool because I hadn't really seen that stuff. And again, like that kind of work is very near and dear to my heart. So definitely, perked up when I saw that. I have to say,
Vanessa was one of the keynote speakers at the NeuraLink reveal last July. As a founding member of NeuraLink, she was right up there center stage, and she earned it and she deserved it.
That is true. Yeah. I think I misspoke on her behalf too. Like outside of NeuraLink, that's her first, personal presentation in 3 years. Something along those lines.
Yeah, no, she's a humble person, but brilliant. So I don't let her slide on being too humble.
Yeah, for sure. And then it was actually very interesting. I don't know if you guys had timed it that way, that the NeuraLink presentation was like right afterwards. That was literally like a half hour later. I didn't see it live, but I did see it later that night. Did you watch that? Did you have any comments about that?
Yeah, Elon was kind enough to call me in advance and make sure it was clear for my schedule. The least I could do was watch. Just kidding. No, it was serendipitous. The timing was perfect, and able to watch in real time, sort of FaceTiming with a friend while we watched together. So that was fun. I'm pretty excited about it. And I think, again, I'm not qualified to talk about the technical advances. I know that form factor and changing it from a behind the ear to a fully implanted device, I think that was beautiful in terms of design. I'll leave the efficacy part of that up to you guys, but it sure looked a lot more palatable to the general public in terms of implantation. And I really think the event did what it was meant to do, which is, he announced it. It was a recruiting event.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was really interesting. On one hand, I was like, oh, that doesn't seem like a lot of progress since last year's announcement. Last year, I was honestly, I was blown away. I'm like, wow, this is like this is like the best technology, the best techniques from all, different aspects, whether it's implantation or transmission or all the electrode design and everything like this. And this year, obviously, at that time, they had 2 years to work on that. This time, they only had 1 year, but still very impressive. As you said, like they changed up the design and now they implanted pigs too, which are a great animal model, the most similar to humans. And yeah, so in one sense, a lot of progress, and other sense, not. It reminds me of like when I saw a rocket launch, it was like, oh, okay, that's a small explosion. That's not really that impressive. But on the other hand, I'm like, wow, that's going to space. That's so crazy. So that's kind of what that felt like.
Yeah, and I think I'm always very entertained by Elon's presentations. I think he's got a great sense of self-awareness and really appreciated his patience when Gertrude wouldn't come out of her cage. And it's pretty, my mother-in-law's name is Gertrude. So I got to share that with her this weekend. So you were the star of the show. Yeah, I think they did a wonderful job. And I think the questions were great. I think obviously there's a hunger from the general public for things like applications for gaming. That's clearly an early proof of concept application for a non-medical need. The desire seems to be there. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. On one hand, I kind of wonder if this is like a play on Medtronic deep brain stimulator stuff. Like if they're not really announcing it, but they're going towards that direction. They'll be like, oh, we accidentally made a deep brain stimulator. And yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking this could be, whether they're aware of it or not, like that could be the long-term direction of this. I think it's got a great market potential, and the rate they're going, I think they could reach it pretty quickly.
I think one thing I am concerned about, and I watch a lot of the headlines that come in afterwards, both on the science and engineering audience side of publications, the technical publications, to some of the lay publications. And it's disheartening to see some of these headlines that Elon Musk is after your brain and he's going to turn the world into zombies and cyborgs and your life is over and every thought that's in your head is about to be the property of Elon Musk. That to me is really the saddest part of this whole thing. And I think that there's a lack of tempered conversation. I think we need to be talking about issues of privacy and security and what brain computer interfaces look like outside of medical need, because it's going to happen. It's not if, it's when. I think it's actually irresponsible to have this sort of over the top hyperbole. That's one thing that's been gnawing at me this weekend.
Interesting. Yeah, him and Bill Gates must have gotten together trying to figure out how to control the world. Bill Gates doing it through 5G and coronavirus. Elon Musk doing it through reading your thoughts. Those are jokes, by the way, conspiracy theories. But yeah, very cool. And then this is meant to be like a faster episode. Just got a quick update. This is what happened. So get this out a little bit faster. But before we go, you have a cool new project that's up and running. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Thank you. Yes, I have a new project called Skraps. With my partner, Arun Sridhar. And it's a podcast, not in competition with yours. I think they're highly complementary. But we really are looking at capturing the moments of scientific brilliance, all of the things that happen in the lab or moments of inspiration behind some incredible science and technology. We've had Warren Grill on so far. We've got about another 20 pretty incredible guests in the works, various stages of production. And I think it's pretty exciting and it's inspirational. We really want to capture the moments where they find inspiration, where they've hit walls, how they overcame those hurdles, who inspires them, how do they inspire students. And it won't just be neurotech. We're going to go far afield, and we're definitely open to any topics you guys want to hear about or any scientists or technologists that you find compelling. So that's at scrapsofbrilliance.com.
And Skraps is spelled Skraps, right?
Yep, Skraps. A play on a couple things. One is it sparks backwards. And the other part of it really is that so many innovations happen on the back of a napkin, little tiny scraps of paper. So if we could make a library out of all those scraps of paper, hopefully they'll show up on Skraps.
Very cool. Jojo, this has been a pleasure. I highly recommend everybody check out the podcast. Podcasts are great. I'm subscribed to something like 170 or something like this. Yeah, the more the merrier, and especially something from somebody as deep or as knowledgeable in the field as you are. I think it's excellent. So yeah, thank you for coming on, Jojo.
Thanks. And I think once you do the connector breakthrough and you and Jack Judy and your compatriots standardize that for us, then we'd love to get the behind the scenes stories on that too.
For sure. For sure. We might have a expose episode at that time. Okay.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.